November and December at two residencies.
The first one was at Hada Studios in Barreiro, and the second one was here at Zaratan. And I was working mostly with a new material. We can see here it's with oil pastel on paper. And I've been exploring a lot of new ideas, and some of these works are still getting developed. But I'll talk a little bit about my process first, and then I'll talk about what kind of research I'm doing behind the works. So like I said, it's oil pastel on paper, and they're very instinctual. I start the works in a very spontaneous way, kind of collaging together different images. I collect images, black and white images, photos that I take myself. Sometimes I work from life, and I'll start off with a piece of paper and start to put the characters on the paper. I think that creating the scene, this process is heavily related to my background in theater. So a lot of the time I think about the position and placement of the character as an upstage and downstage. I'm thinking about eye contact, body language, and really just forming a scene as if it's on a stage. So some of the research that I've been doing, this kind of comes after the piece is done. So the piece starts off in a very personal, sort of emotional stage, and then once the piece is finished, I'll analyze it. And then I'll relate what I think is happening in the scene to a larger story or a larger idea from life. And more recently, those stories are Greek myths. So I've been very interested in Greek mythology, and I'm starting to read Ovid's Metamorphoses. And what I'm doing in particular is looking at the female protagonists in Metamorphoses and trying to look at the story from their perspective. Most of the women in these stories, their voices are mistrusted. A lot of them are assaulted, and they're always blamed for wrongdoings. And I found that to be still connected to a lot of things that are happening today. One more thing that I would like to jump to actually before going into that further is that I found over these past weeks, some of the emotions that were coming up in these characters were isolation, solitude, and aloneness. And so I really try to explore the different ways that you feel alone. In what context can you be alone? Can you be alone if you're in a room standing with people? If you're alone in nature, or if you're feeling alone by yourself in your room. So there's lots of different ways that people feel isolated in the world. And in that way, I will start off over here with another piece in the corridor. So this piece is called Pyrrha and Deucalion. I think I'm Deucalion, excuse me. It's a hard Greek pronunciation. Hopefully I didn't completely ruin that. This was sort of the first breakthrough piece that I had, and it was at Hada that I created this piece. Yeah, stand back out of the light. And so the story of Pyrrha and Deucalion is basically the entire world is flooded. Everyone dies. And these two are the most pious people left, and therefore they survive because they believe in God. So Zeus decides not to kill them, which is nice, right? So the whole world is flooded, and then finally when the flood is over and everything is starting to return back, we have Deucalion saying, "The world has been flooded. Jove punished humankind for all the sacrilege, and only two people survived, the two beings who were pious, Deucalion and Pyrrha. The world had been restored to what it was, but Deucalion saw Earth so forlorn, a wasteland where deep silence ruled, a bare and desolate expanse. He shed sad tears and said to Pyrrha, "Oh, my wife, dear sister, the only woman left on Earth, the one to whom I was first linked as a dear cousin, and then now as husband. Now we are together in danger. All the lands, both east and west, are empty now, and we alone are left. The sea has taken all the rest, and we may not survive. We have no certainties. That vision of the clouds still haunts my mind. How would you feel, sad heart, if you'd survived the fatal flood, but I had lost my life? How would you, all alone, have borne the fear, with whom you would, all alone, have shared your tears? For if the sea had swallowed you, dear wife, I too, believe me, would have followed you and let the deluge drown me too." So this absolute devotion, right? And I was thinking about how when a person is dying, they're feeling very isolated, of course. This is something they have to go through alone. But also the person that is caring for this person that is dying. That is also a very isolating experience. And there's a lot on that person's shoulders to go through this this passage with this other person as well. So I thought that was something that pretty much everyone has to live through at some point, is caring for a loved one while they're dying. And that related quite nicely to this myth. So, moving on. Let's see, we can talk about man in the forest. This piece is still kind of getting worked out, I think, in terms of how I'm relating it to a myth, specific myth. But I was thinking about placing this character in nature and our relationship to nature nowadays. And also specifically about the history of Black men depicted in imagery in the US. And generally, growing up and still today, they're either depicted in a very threatening way or sexualized. And so I wanted to bring this character, who's in my mind a Black American, back to something very human, which is our place in nature, and connecting him with a Californian landscape where I'm from. And I wanted to connect it with this quote from the Iron Age, which is part of a myth, which is part of the fourth stage of mankind being formed. Not only did men ask of earth its wealth, its harvest crops and foods that nourish us, they also delved into the bowels of earth. There they began to dig for what was hid deep underground, beside the shades of Styx, the treasures that spur men to sacrilege. So I think this idea of us sort of taking the wealth from the earth is still happening, and that's one of the many reasons why our earth is struggling right now, and we have climate change. So yeah, I'm in a lot of my work, I'm interested in how we can reconnect with our plants, our trees, and feel empathy for these other beings that we're living with. So this here is Io, and Io, maybe some of you have heard of this myth. Io was turned into a cow. I think some of you may have heard of this myth before. Zeus falls in love with her, and she's basically told to go into this forest, and you'll be protected. And of course that doesn't happen, and Zeus comes and assaults her. There is a trigger warning in this quote that I will read, just as to let you know. And Zeus says, "O virgin, you indeed would merit Jove, and Jove is Zeus, by the way, another way to say that, and will make any man you wed, whoever he may be, most glad. But now it's time for you to seek the shade of those deep woods. Do not be afraid to find yourself alone among the haunts of savage beasts. Within the forest depths, you can be sure of safety, for your guardian is a god, and I am not a common deity. For I am he who holds within his hands the heaven's scepter. I am he who hurls the roaming thunderbolts, so do not flee. Then a veil of heavy fog, the god concealed a vast expanse of the land. Jove stopped her flight. He raped chaste Io. So what I was interested in is how this person changes after the assault. So an assault, of course, the experience itself is one thing, but there's also what this person has to live with for the rest of their life afterwards, and how that changes them and their surroundings. And later on in the poem, in Ovid's poem, he's describing how Io doesn't recognize her surroundings anymore. She's turned into this cow. She doesn't recognize her own voice. Her own voice frightens her. And I think that really relates to a lot of people or women who don't feel like they speak up after an assault. Maybe they're stuck in court and they're too frightened to say something. So this character is completely changed and is even continued to be objectified when Hera asks for the cow as a gift from Zeus. And so she's basically sold to Hera as a gift. Yeah, she's silenced, and this is connecting back to this idea of isolation. When a woman is silenced, this is a very isolating experience. When you can't say something, it's very isolating. Yeah. And if anyone has anything they want to bring up during this, you're welcome to say something. Moving on to Argus. So Argus is relating to Io in that he was employed by Hera to be Io's guardian. So Io's this cow, and all she's allowed to do is graze and eat grass, and he's guarding to make sure that's all she does and doesn't run away. And when I painted this at first, I was really thinking about the political situation in the US and how polarized everything is. And this character, for me, feels like he's defending something, and this dog sort of represents loyalty, but he's very harsh and sort of on edge and blocking out everyone else. And I think, in a way, Argus is sort of blindly following the direction of Hera, in that, okay, I'm told to do this one thing, I'm going to listen to you and just control this woman and make sure she doesn't do anything wrong, without even really questioning why he's doing it. So I think a lot of people right now are being brainwashed by news and fake news and, yada yada. I have in my own family folks that are, oh, I just touched the mic, hopefully that didn't ruin anything, sorry. A lot of families are being divided, and this is causing people to feel really alone in the US, is not having their voices heard or not feeling heard. And this idea of polarization, I think, is very isolating for a lot of people. Yeah. So, back into this room. This piece over here on the wall, I'll go back to talking about my process for a minute, actually. This was a larger work that I tried. And the background's not, if you come up close, you can kind of see that I painted it with acrylic rather than using this colored paper, and it has a different effect. But it was definitely more challenging to create this work because, like I said, I worked through instinct and I don't plan anything ahead of time. So I'm really kind of drawing and working things out on the page as it comes along. And with a larger work, obviously, that can be more challenging. But I think in the future, I would like to try and do a larger work using this kind of flatness of the paper. I think it has a more intense effect and is a bit more graphic.
I have a question.
Yes?
Is that Elon Musk?
That is Elon Musk. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you for bringing him up.
No problem.
Very good point. Let's go check out Elon Musk.
So
This is Elon Musk in his really fancy tuxedo, that guy. This piece is called Half Gods. And Elon Musk, I think today is somewhat like a half god.
That's why he's half in
For some people.
Perhaps. But like I said, the analysis comes after, so this title came after creating the piece. But that's kind of the fun in it, is finding how you can make connections to wordplay or make connections to myths, even though it's not necessarily at the forefront during the creation process. So I think it's a valid way to conduct research, right? Because we're used to okay, I'm going to find my facts first, and then afterwards I'm going to put it together and create this image from it. Why not work backwards? So that's a lot of fun for me. But anyways, maybe he's a half god, but the other thing I thought he could be was also Zeus, right? So he's sort of in disguise all the time and going around and basically assaulting people and then trying to cover up for his deeds. But there's too many people like Elon Musk, or let's say there's a few people like Elon Musk that have too much power in this world, and they're causing chaos, and that needs to change. So I think what's happened recently, I drew this when he took over Twitter and started taking away people's rights to say things and giving people too many rights to be able to say things that shouldn't be said online. So that's Elon Musk. These are 3 nymphs. This is, I think, a pilgrim. I'm not totally sure. But the pilgrim outfits you'll see kind of come up in my work. I think it's related to the fact that women's rights have really regressed in the last year. And that's why this clothing is going back in time as well. So we've got abortion rights in the US that have regressed and gone back in time. That's really messed up. You've got women in Iran with issues being able to wear what they want to wear. You have women in Afghanistan who can't go to school anymore. So there's a lot happening in this world, and it's feeling really backwards. But yeah, let's check out some little works maybe, or you have a question?
Shell with the hand.
Oh, good, yes, shell with the hand. Let's look at this detail. This is a shell and a hand and a shell, excuse me. And this you will see come up in my work over the last, I don't know, at least 5 years. I got obsessed with this motif, and if you guys have heard of Dora Maar is most widely known as one of Picasso's greatest muses. But more importantly, she's actually this really badass surrealist artist. She was a photographer. And one of the photos that she took was of this hand coming out of a shell. And it's a black and white photograph. Like I said earlier, I collect black and white photographs. Well, not collect, but print out. And I just found it to be a really haunting image. And it's kind of popped up in a lot of things. Yeah.
No relation to Adam's family?
No relation to Adam's family. No. But yeah, I think we have to give more kudos and more recognition to a lot of these women from the Surrealist movement, because back then they were, and still are, were just objectified or were muses. But there were a lot of women who contributed to that movement and were really important. So yeah, she's one of them. That's my hats off to Dora Maar. All right, so these are some smaller works. These were kind of the first things that I started experimenting with pastel. I think this was the first one I ever did. And I was just interested in this sort of texture here. And then my mom came over and said, well, aren't you going to smudge it? I said, yeah, I guess I should probably smudge it at some point. And then I smudged it, and I was like, okay, that looks a lot better than Mama always knows best, right? So, but yeah, I think with smaller works, they need to, I want the smaller works to have as much impact as the larger ones, and that's something that I'm still working on. It's a big challenge for me, but I think you don't need to make a giant work in order for it to be important, in order for it to have a lot of impact. You can really pack in a lot into something small. So this one here is probably my favorite one. I think the most successful one in here. It's the potato farmer, but he's unemployed. Not too many potatoes where he is right now, so yeah. Trying to think about what else in this room. I guess I can talk a little bit about these plants that are coming up, because I think you asked me about that earlier, right? Maybe, yes, maybe not. Someone
I
did.
was thinking about it actually right now to ask, but you.
Oh, okay.
You raised the point you.
Very good, very good. So the plants, I come from Berkeley, California, and very proudly, and there's a lot of plants there. If you walk around, you'll just get so much diversity. Hopefully it didn't, yeah, it's fine. There's a ton of diversity, lots of trees and fruits and ferns and pretty much anything you can think of, and that's always entered my work too, I think. I just really appreciate having that kind of plant life diversity. So all of these plants you'll see are from somewhere where I live.
But the fruit is because sometimes they look like peaches, sometimes they look like tangerines or.
These are persimmons,
Ah, okay.
but I'm having yeah, they're kind of hard to draw. I don't know if anyone's tried drawing a persimmon, but they're kind of weirdly shaped. So. And they do pretty much look like peaches, but I'm still working out how to depict those. But it's fine. That's important that, you know, the viewer kind of decides what they're seeing in my work.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want, yeah.
Probably a botanist would tell by the green leaves.
Yes, yes, the very accurate green leaves there. They could. No.
What's the thing with that hand on the shoulder?
So this was, yeah, I was thinking a little bit more about this idea of the pilgrim outfit, right? And then sort of this mysterious, I think it's a male hand. I'm going to say it's a male hand right on top of the shoulder. And she's sort of startled here, like, oh my gosh, this person is either touching me or controlling me or something, but something's going on.
Intimidated.
She's intimidated or scared or WTF, like this hand on the shoulder. But I think that can represent quite a lot. But I like the idea of we don't really see the person outside of the image. We don't know what their intentions are here.
Just a comment, I don't know if you agree, but I think here we're speaking a lot about portraiture, and I think face and hand are one of the most expressive things on a human being.
Yeah.
And actually the hand is also returning a lot in the other.
Yeah.
I think it's about expression and how you identify a character into.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
No, it's true. I think hands are very expressive. I mean, this one's kind of weird, right? But it adds to the strangeness of the character. But yeah, I do agree. I think.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was wondering if the faces are always you come up with the faces as you go, or do you have any reference, or are you thinking about anyone or looking at any?
Yeah, I do like working from references, but they are almost always quite manipulated. My intention is never to copy a face.
And black and white, which is shocking.
Yeah.
When I saw her studio and everything, it's
Always
black and white.
and then very colorful.
And how is it possible that you transform a black and white picture into something so acid and colorful?
I think that's a really important part of the process, is me looking at this face and wanting to enter that person and bring their soul out somehow, or bring something out that's real. And I really feel like when I'm drawing them, like I'm acting or something and becoming this person. I'll often catch myself making like the expression that I'm drawing, and I'll be like, you know, in the corner with my mouth open. I don't know. But yeah, really bringing to life. But sometimes they are completely made up. Sometimes they do look more like the image. Sometimes it'll be from life. So it's kind of mixed.
That's actually almost like a signature when you look at a black and white picture and you transform that black and white portrait in a color one. That's your own interpretation of that portrait, not anybody else's. Not a photograph, a color photograph. It's you looking at a black and white photo and seeing that in color.
Right.
I would see it differently,
Of course.
So it's very personal.
Right. Right.
So it's nice.
I think it has to be because the photograph is also an artwork, right?
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
I mean, I think Picasso said like, good artists borrow, but great artists steal, right? But you're still taking these ideas that someone's formed and turning them into your own, and you have to change them somehow for it to be your own thought. But yeah, I think one more thing, and then that's wrapping it up, maybe. I think one more subject which I kind of touched on, which was important for me, is that the viewer really comes up with their own explanation for the piece and are able to apply their own experiences, their own traumas, their own injustices that they've experienced, or humor, whatever it is, coming up with their own ideas of what's going on in the piece. Originally, I had a different title for this work. Right now, it's titled Iron Age, this fourth stage, right? But at first, I titled it a quote out of that, which was, "The husband plots the death of his own wife, and she plots his." And I thought that was kind of fit perfectly with the work. But then at the end, I decided maybe it's a little too confining, because if it has just one meaning, then maybe it inhibits someone from coming up with a different explanation. But I really like how these characters are isolating or feeling alone in this work, because we don't know if they're aware of each other. We don't know if maybe they have no idea that the other person is there. So just touching on that again, like the context in which we feel alone. And I think there's so many different ways, and a lot of times we have no idea if someone is feeling alone. And yeah.
Also, you have this motif that repeats. Was that like a study of the other, or was it?
So this is Head of Daphne, and this has popped up in a lot of my work. I've been really into Apollo and Daphne, and I'm using the statue from Bernini, which many of you have probably seen or heard of. It's a most incredible statue, and here I've just basically cut off the head and turned it on the side. But yeah, this tale is basically of Daphne is being chased after by Apollo. Apollo has fallen in love with her because of Cupid. And he says, I must, fallen in love, quote unquote. Basically wants to assault her, right? So he's running after her, and she says, oh, please, Father, can you help me? I need help, I'm being chased after Apollo. And her father turns her into a tree, a laurel tree. And this, quote unquote, saves her. But once again, this woman is robbed of her life. She's robbed of her body. She's robbed of her ability to speak. She's turned into this tree because of this man and his bad intentions. So I think, once again, thinking about how one moment can affect someone for a lifetime. Yeah. But in other words, this piece is also relating to the idea of museums. I was thinking about museums and collections and how women are represented in museums, or not represented at all, rather. But really, our stats are really quite bad. They've been, most museums have like 90% white men as artists, which is just terrible. So, yeah.
And the museums themselves, and the streets where the museums are, and the houses around the museums, everything was done by men.
Yeah.
Which was a kind of stat that I heard recently, like over 90-something% all urban housing, whatever, was drawn by men.
Yeah.
Which is just something you don't think about.
Yeah.
And it's just so
Embedded.
jarring.
It's very jarring, and it's very much embedded in what we see and are exposed to, and hopefully that's slowly changing. Yeah.
For me, something very live and very surprising about your work here is about how you confuse time, and there is this present reference of ancient Greek, but then you is dressed with a cross shirt. There is not ancient, there is pilgrim, there is mix, and I would appreciate this kind of mixture because I think it keeps you from arriving to a direct confusion.
Yeah.
A direct definition of what's happening. You don't know where you are, in which time or which place.
Right.
And I think that allows the viewer to dream a lot more about what's happening there. And you speak a lot about psychological landscape. I don't know if you want to share something more about that or how the process is built, but yeah, put more into it.
And also after the eyes and the plants and the landscape or the hand, I also noticed that maybe the moon and the sun appears a lot in your work. Would you like to share a little bit about, is it something specific meaning or is the story behind it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just touching on this idea of psychological landscapes, I think that's a term that I came up with to describe them because I do think that emotion is a way to understand the world, and for a lot of history, it's not been seen as something intelligent in a way, but I think emotional intelligence is extremely important, and it allows us to relate to others, it allows us to understand the world, it allows us to just feel empathy, which is super important in terms of climate change, in terms of all of these issues that I've been talking about. But in terms of this sun and moon,
You're both at the same time, you know?
I can tell you that when there is a full moon, I do not sleep, which was last night. Yeah.
Do you come outside?
I come outside. No, I do feel a little crazy. I don't know. It affects me. And I think there's something really special about a full moon. But no, I think the sun and the moon are mostly they are just for visual purposes and just helping create a certain atmosphere. I mean, a lot of the works have the sun when there's a fire going on. None of them here, but sometimes I paint that and it's this really intense red moon, and there's smoke filling the sky. So yeah, I think the sun can really create a big effect, an atmospheric effect for the viewer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're free.
Is it done?
Offline.
Goodbye. I don't know if I'm still on, but goodbye, everybody.
Now you can tell the truth. Now.
Yeah, actually.